Hey guys, it's Tuesday. Welcome back to the Huddle. We've got a lot to get into today. Epstein, ICE, tariffs. But first, we are 3 days out from Valentine's Day. This is the really important thing. Have you both gotten your wives presents?
No, because we're not going to be together. So we're gonna be in separate locations on Valentine's Day. So
is this like a rain check?
No. I'm always showering my wife with love. Always.
You don't need a holiday to celebrate.
That's exactly it.
Sean, what do you think about that answer?
Well, Rachel, I already ordered some Cozy Earth pajamas, and I didn't want to give.
I hope your wife isn't watching the show because now she knows what her gift is.
Yeah, I think after 22 years, she pretty much knows what her gift is every day.
I should have texted you guys about this because my husband never wants anything ever.
Oh,
and
I know
he's
that
the hardest person to shop for.
So you know what? As I get older, I'm in that camp. I want experiences and things like get me a gift card. I don't want you to try to just get me or even something like once a year I treat myself to a tennis lesson. I don't play tennis, but I'll do.
I'm sorry, where did that come from?
I know. But I'm just saying, I want something that's I don't need another shirt So it's
that's how my wife is. She's the same way. She's like, don't buy me something just to check a box.
Totally agree.
And so at this point, yes.
Yeah. You know what always wins though? These little babies. Dove dark chocolates. I had 5 or 6 of them for breakfast.
I thought that was a CB Distillery gummy for a second.
Oh no.
Maybe they're combined.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. All right, today's 5. We'll talk about the drip with Epstein and lawmakers going over to the DOJ, coming back not happy, just as we predicted yesterday. ICE funding talks are happening, but there's still a standoff, obviously, on an agreement how to reform ICE. We'll discuss this bubbling House tariff frustration. Speaker Johnson, once again, in the spotlight, trying to get the votes to block these votes from coming to the floor. We'll dig into that. We'll talk about Dr. Oz calling for measles vaccinations and this latest endorsement of Ken Paxton in the race against Cornyn. Does this mean the end to John's Cornyn campaign? And what does this mean for the primary? So I guess we should just jump right into the daybook because there is a ton here. Okay, so today we have the retail sales for December. Tomorrow we'll get the inflation and jobs numbers. At 10 a.m., the heads of ICE and Border Patrol are going to be in the hot seat on the Hill at the House Homeland Security Committee. This is obviously the hearing that Andrew Garbarino called, the Republican chairman, right after Alex Preddy's death. It sort of is a reminder to me that we actually haven't seen a lot of headlines about Minnesota recently, guys, which tells you the temperature is starting to come down. Is that fair?
I don't know. I mean, if you read in Minnesota and you listen to the state officials and local officials, there's still frustration. But I think in terms of public demonstration and confrontation, it's quieter, which is good. And hat tip to Tom Homan for, I think, helping to spearhead the temperature coming down.
Sean, any expectations for you on that hearing? Do you think they're going to take the posture of admitting fault in a change of course, or do they play defensive?
It's interesting because Lyons himself is a former agent, so I think that he can talk to procedures probably a lot more authoritatively than a lot of these members are going to come in and try to make accusations. I think the big question comes down to what I have seen. Hearings have sort of evolved into this game of gotcha. Yes or no. Do you believe that the sky is blue? As opposed to actually getting to substance. If there's a member that wants to engage in real thing, hey, do you think that would body cameras undermine procedure? Yes or I mean, I guess the question to me is going to be on both sides. Do they come in with their heels dug in, I'm not going to give, or is there an attempt to try to find some, not just common ground, but explain possible areas of agreement. I don't know. I think there's going to be a little bit of both, because I think some members from the preview stories were dug in, like, I want to get these guys, and some,
Totally.
and then to your question about the other side, like, I don't know. I mean, I think that they might just want to, from a prep standpoint, come in and be indignant. We did nothing wrong. You clearly saw that tone from the top with Kristi Noem. So do they follow that lead? Or based on their experiences, Rodney Scott, again, a former border sector, he was El Centro border sector. Like, these guys have experience, and they can speak to that in a way that a lot of the political appointees don't have the background to do. So
yeah,
I think the big challenge for House Democrats today is that of all the people, if I had to list who are likely going to go off, it is House Democrats, and that will make these budget negotiations harder. And I keep saying this. We do run the risk of losing the public narrative if people go off the rails. And so I wonder what the game plan is. I have to think Hakeem Jeffries has talked to the committee and said, you got to be careful. You can be angry. You can make your points, but we cannot have public calls for defunding, abolishing, some of these more extreme elements in the party.
The question, though, is whether they listen, right?
Of course.
They often ignore Jeffries in terms of his advice. No, on the Republican side, I'm predicting that the members are going to get these guys on record speaking to the Dem demands and how that will impact ICE, right? What does it mean when you take off masks? What does it mean when you use a judicial warrant versus an administrative warrant? I mean, and that, of course, will influence the talks today. So
hey, can I just add, by the way, retail sales were flat. They were expected to rise because it's the Christmas shopping season. So that will
Valentine? Oh, this was for December.
Yeah, for December. And interesting for those who follow this stuff. Tomorrow is the jobs data. It was supposed to come Friday, but because of the shutdown, they delayed it a few days. What's his name? Kevin Hassett had a very interesting set of comments about jobs numbers maybe slowing due to population shifts, which raised a lot of eyebrows because he might know what those jobs numbers are. So is the administration trying to get ahead of what perhaps tomorrow is not going to be a pretty jobs report, but we'll see.
Interesting. We'll be following. Also at 10 a.m., Senate Commerce Committee is going to be putting a spotlight on this fight over national media ownership capped at 39%. This obviously comes as the president backed the Nexstar Tegna merger. So that'll be an interesting hearing. GOP leadership in the House is going to be doing their post-gathering press conference. Expect a lot of talk about the ICE discussions. 10:45, Democrats going to be doing the same thing on the other side of the aisle. 1 p.m., Caroline Leavitt's going to be briefing. 4 p.m., the president's participating in a signing ceremony, signing time. 5:30, he has a policy meeting, and at 7, he has a private dinner. Just one quick housekeeping reminder. We talked about this yesterday, but flag for your calendar, February 24th, we're going to be doing the State of the Union pre-show, not just pre-show. We're going to be doing a State of the Union show. So we'll talk before the show, we'll talk through the show, and then we'll sort of digest it all afterwards. It's going to be really fun. So make sure you put that in your calendar. And let's just do a quick word from our sponsor before we jump in. Sean, Cozy Earth?
Well, look, I mentioned it at the top. I love the number of people who stop me now and joke about how much they're enjoying. I know they think it's funny to stop me and mention it, but it's so true. I've mentioned it before, from waking up to falling asleep. There's Cozy Earth has something for everything. And if you're still searching for that last minute Valentine's Day gift, go to Cozy Earth, use our code Huddle for 20% off site wide. And I'm telling you, you can get anything for anyone and they will love it. Towels, blankets, the joggers, the pajamas, the eye mat. I mean, you can't get enough Cozy Earth. And I'm not kidding you. You will not go wrong. I've given it to basically everyone at Christmas. Renowned success. I don't know how I'm going to follow it up this year, but if you are looking for that last minute gift, or even as the year goes on, get ahead of something, get it now, squirrel it away, even get ahead of next year's Christmas. I'm not going to judge you, but go to cozyearth.com, use code Huddle, 20% off. I'm telling you, you will, whether it's for yourself or as a gift for that I mean, Rachel, I'm telling you, your husband, your friends, anyone that you need, they'll be excited if you just, get whatever you want, but they're not going to be disappointed. The blanket, we all love that. I mean, you can't go wrong with the Cozy Earth bubble blanket either. So
almost left Sean speechless. It's so good.
It is.
Yeah, there you go.
Good.
Thanks, Cozy Earth. Let's talk about CB Distillery. So I told you guys I got a package of some goodies from CB Distillery, and today I'm going to talk about another one. This is the balm for soothing muscle pains. Guys, it smells amazing. If only you could smell through the television.
Well, guess what?
Peppermint or spearmint. Oh, look, Sean's got his too. It feels tingly on the skin. It's fantastic. I told you guys at the beginning of the year that my New Year's resolution was to start working out again 3 years after the baby. And I still haven't done it, but this is going to motivate me because I want to try this on sore muscles and report back. But I can just tell you in the meantime, it feels great. Just putting it on your skin, even if you don't have sore muscles. And I should also mention they have products for sleep, which I talked about yesterday, mood and stress, and product availability depends on your state regulations. Oh, some music. Look.
All right.
Go
to cbdistillery.com and use my code HUDDLE for 25% off. At cbdistillery.com. Use my code HUDDLE.
That was the CB Distillery theme song, in case you can.
Sean likes to get pumped up before we go to the top 5, so he just starts playing some music just to get the blood flowing a little.
Yeah.
All right.
Listen, if we could do background music with the show, I would be all for it. All for it. Maybe we do that sometime. Just try it out. Okay, let's talk about Epstein. Like I said at the top of the show, we flagged this for you yesterday. Lawmakers going to the DOJ to look at unredacted versions of the Epstein files. We knew they were going to come back and be pissed off and want to see more information, and that is exactly what happened. You had Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna saying DOJ is redacting all kinds of stuff that they shouldn't be redacting, and that includes the names of 6 people that they say there's enough evidence to potentially incriminate them. Now they are considering using the speech and debate clause, which is a clause in the Constitution that protects lawmakers from legal action based on what they say on the Hill in a hearing or on the floor. They're considering using this to go on the floor and read the names. Now, there have been a ton of accusations that have come out. Some of the names are fairly sort of innocuous mentions, but some of them are obviously bad. Sean, why protect these 6? And do you think DOJ will sort of move quickly to release these names?
So this whole thing to me, and I've said this before, I get why it's very personal to a lot of people. It's sort of interesting, though. We've seen the back and forth a little, like Congress forced DOJ to release stuff that normally isn't public. And then you saw a lot of victims come out and say, we now have information coming out that we didn't want, we didn't expect. And there's going to be this balance. It's to me, this is the problem with this, is that you've got people whose names, both on the victim side, from the women, some men who were inappropriately caught up potentially and just, back and forth, but, who are worried about their reputations, which I understand. And then there are people who are actually guilty or associated with wrongdoing that probably should get exposed. And you're going through and sifting through literally millions of documents in a short order. And things are going to fall through the cracks. And to some degree, it's like the Supreme Court ruling on pornography where, it's you think you see it when you know it. It's subjective. So what Tom Massie says, these people are guilty or whatever, maybe a lawyer says, yeah, but until we know that, like, it's easy and subjective to read a document and say that name should be out there. There are people who legally might say, unfortunately, because of the protections, I don't know. This is going to be a real interesting conundrum, though, because they're getting access to information. And then under the speech and debate clause, they could go down to the floor in the well of the House and read off stuff. This, to me, is going to be a really interesting next few days because members can go, there's 4 computers there. They can go through them, and then they've got to have a decision. Now, what was untold is that DOJ did agree with apparently some of the questions and said, okay, on that one, maybe, on that one. And you're going to, over 3 or 5 million documents, I think you're going to have some areas where they agree, some areas where they disagree, and some sort of mixed bag ones. And I think this is going to take a while to play out.
Let's bring up this first element from Thomas Massie, because he was starting to complain about this on Twitter, a bunch of stuff. And sort of one by one, Todd Blanche sort of responded to him and said, this name might have been redacted here, but actually the CEO is mentioned in a bunch of other things. So clearly it wasn't intentional. We're going to unredact it now. It gets to this point that you make, Sean, which is that they have they've kind of messed up a lot of things when it comes to going through all these files, right? Sometimes the victims' names are out there, or victims' information that that shouldn't have been out there, and then sometimes names that should have been out were redacted. And so Todd Blanche obviously trying to respond to this, but Dan, you mentioned in our conversation about what this is going to do to sort of conspiracy theories out there and the fear that the government is trying to hold back names. Talk a little bit about that. And one point I want to make as well, Massey even said that one of these people, one of the 6, is under investigation. And doesn't that sort of justify not releasing their names if they're under investigation? Isn't that one of the reasons you do not do that? Or maybe it doesn't matter because this is Epstein and people want stuff out?
Well, I think if you step back here, I think the bigger issue going on right now is a lot of these names in some form or other have been part of the conversation about Epstein now for the last few years. And most people whose names are public have put out these statements of, oh, I had no idea, and oh, my interaction was limited. What we're seeing with all of this stuff is more and more that picture is much more complicated for a lot of people. I'm here in New York City. It's all over the business press. It's all over the financial press, the gossip press of Page Six and other things, detailing how much more some of these people had engagement with Epstein. And now you have this accusation of this Middle Eastern royal who is Massey alleged in that tweet may have been very involved. And of course, at the heart of all the Epstein stuff is this notion that the powerful people were able to cover their tracks and not ever really be held accountable. And that is what's at the core. That's what fueled the initial, 2021 conspiracy theories that JD and others were always pushing. And now it's what Democrats have latched onto. And so when you have these stories that very powerful people supposedly cut, deals with DOJ, I think Giselle Maxwell alleges 22 people, she says, have these special arrangements with the government. Now you have these names that apparently are redacted that, sounds like maybe shouldn't have been redacted. At the end of the day, transparency has been hard to come by unless really, really pressed on this issue under both parties. So I don't think that any of this is going to stop that movement.
Can I say one quick thing? Because all of us have kids. I'm sure we've all had the conversation. Rachel, your daughter's probably too young to have this, but about social media and putting things in writing. And it's funny because we talk about it mostly in the context of kids understanding this permanent footprint that you have when you post stuff. And I think about all these dudes who were texting or emailing back and forth 15, 20, I guess 20 years ago now. And you're now having to explain 20 some odd years later what the situation and the circumstances were around this guy who generally was perceived as a bad dude. And it's just sort of a reminder to me of, President Trump rarely puts things in writing, and he always used to joke about using email. And you see why. It's because now all these people are having to explain the context of what they were doing, why it wasn't as bad and nefarious as you might think. But it's just, to me, it's another reminder of.
Here's the other thing. But here's the other thing, though, because my wife and I were talking about this the other day. Part of what's coming out is this kind of behind the curtain of how rich people trade favors, meaning law partners and investment bankers. Hey, can you get my kid into this college? Hey, can you help with a job for this friend? Hey, look, this is how the world works based on relationships. Well, Epstein traded in relationships. And so the number of people now that it's coming out that were emailing with him up until a month or two before he died, including one famous real estate mogul in New York City, who it was now discovered that Epstein was allowed out of his prison cell to go to a local office a couple hours a week, and people were coming to meet him in his office to avoid being caught in going into the jail where it would register and it would be made public.
Incredible.
I mean, just all these stories. So now so this is the point, Sean. It's coming out that people did not stop communicating with him after the initial charges. They kept dealing with him, and they kept horse trading with him.
You both teed up two things I want to hit on here. First, Sean, talking about not putting things in writing and conversations that happened 20 years ago. One of these tidbits that came out last night, former Palm Beach police chief told the FBI in 2019 that Trump himself called him in 2006, 20 years ago, called him 20 years ago and said, right when they started investigating Epstein, basically good. Thank goodness you're doing this, that you're stopping him. Everyone knows he's been doing this for years, which number one does confirm that Trump had this break with Epstein and he wanted to see him, put behind bars. But at the same time, contradicts what the president has said before, which is that he didn't know, Epstein was doing any of this awful stuff at the time. And then I also want to bring up this other point because you mentioned people in power, Dan, Howard Lutnick. So one of the people everyone talking about right now, Howard Lutnick told podcasters that he stopped talking to Epstein completely in 2005. Turns out that was not true, that he stayed in touch and discussed even visiting Epstein Island as recently as 2012, which was 4 years after Epstein was convicted. Again, powerful people staying in touch despite
with his family. I mean, in fairness to Lutnick,
and his wife,
fair, but still, that's not what he said. That's not what he said. He said he stopped talking to this guy completely.
No, I get it. But the visit to the island was with his wife and kids, not a bunch of guys. Hey, can we come party on the island? Just in fairness to Howard Lutnick, that is what the email traffic bears out.
I'm just surprised he would be in touch with him at all.
Yeah, well,
right. There's two issues. There's being in touch, but again, you don't. To Dan's point, you don't travel with your wife and kids to go do bad things, right? So whether or not he still had an association with them is one thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is, again, I think that, like I said, to Dan's point, he's traveling with his wife and kids. This isn't
and they were neighbors on the Upper East Side. Again, I'm not a Howard Lutnick defender, folks, but their townhouses were next door to each other on the Upper East Side. So that's how the Lutnicks and Epstein knew each other. The famous interview, where Lutnick says, "My wife and I toured his house."
Right. Sean, this won't impact his standing at all in the administration.
No.
Right. Okay.
No, again, remember, it's like, I know that, like, I haven't gone through a bunch of like different depositions about Russia and like when people start getting into timelines about things that happened 5, 10, 15 years ago.
20. Mm-hmm.
Right. But I mean, my point is that even if it's one of the things that they'll tell you to cue in on and again, what Howard's comments were with respect to a podcast. It wasn't like he was under oath. Right. Somebody says to me, when was the last time you talked to Dan? I'll be like, I don't know. It was like last Tuesday. And you go, wait, didn't you guys see each other at that event? Oh yeah, I did. I mean, there's one thing to be under oath and to be deposed on something, and another thing to have a recollection on a podcast. So I just like, this is not like, and again, there's nothing about Howard Lutnick's behavior that's being called into question. Whether his association, as Dan said, guy lived next door to him, whether he should have been still talking to him or not is a fair conversation. But there's nothing about his behavior that's in question. And in this administration, again, with so many other people having connections and tied up to him, I doubt being able to say, oh, I actually stayed in touch with my neighbor, even though he was potentially a bad dude, isn't going to kill you in this administration.
Okay, let's move on to ICE and these talks on Capitol Hill. So Democratic leaders last night rejected a White House counteroffer on DHS reforms. Let's bring up element 2, the Jeffries tweet. Hakeem Jeffries, leader in the House with Democrats, saying the White House counteroffer on DHS funding is woefully inadequate. Try again. Democrats also put out a joint statement with Schumer and Jeffries saying that the GOP proposal includes neither details nor legislative text, which honestly I kind of find rich given that Democrats waited.
I know, I was going to say, they didn't offer legislative text.
They didn't offer legislative text until 5 days before deadline, and now they're complaining.
Details.
Regardless, details. So Dan, the hope here is obviously to just show some good faith negotiation. They're not going to get there by Friday. I mean, like, they're just not. But you see John Thune talking at a very positive tone. You see the White House even like saying things on background about things being positive or moving in a right direction. And clearly their hope is that Democrats will allow them to have more time to negotiate this deal.
Yep.
How do you read
this? I still think you have to look past the public noise and public posturing. Jeanne Shaheen came out and said that she's open to a 2-week extension as long as these conversations continue. In no statement has any Democrat said we're not going to talk to the administration anymore. So they are continuing to talk. They are continuing to horse trade. I'll be very curious Caroline Leavitt's tone today, because she so far has had, been the tip of the spear of restraint, of not taking the bait, of not, kind of firing across the bow. So I believe the staffs are still talking, and I believe that both sides at the end of the day, because Hakeem Jeffries wants to be speaker and Chuck Schumer wants to be majority leader, see a deal being reached as in their interest. I still believe that.
We're starting to get a sense of the White House's red lines. There's some reporting suggesting that this whole thing about requiring judicial warrants to go into private property instead of administrative warrants, that is a non-starter for them. And they've indicated that they could be open to IDs for officers in maybe certain places being off limits, like the courts or school areas, polling centers, if Democrats give major concessions. I'm still skeptical that Democrats will give any concessions.
Here's the thing, though, on the judicial warrants. That may get dropped because the courts are going to rule they have to use judicial warrants.
Is that teed up right now in the courts? Like
it is moving through the courts, and I think there's a belief. And again, I go back to J.D. Vance's famous comment of like, if the courts rule that, then that's what we're going to do. That could be one. Again, from a public relations standpoint, White House will say we protected, executive prerogative. The Democrats will laugh and just bite their lip and know that a couple weeks later it's struck down.
Sean, you've worked on the Hill before. Next week is supposed to be a congressional recess for the Senate, and they're supposed to all go to the Munich Security Conference. How does that impact talks?
Well, nothing. I've got to, like the Senate work. Come on.
Doesn't it give them tarmac fever? Like,
can you imagine if this happens and they're all sitting in Europe talking about
security?
Like, yeah. Like,
wait. By the way, that's the irony. You're going to go to a security conference while you're not funding DHS. Beautiful. I don't think they can go, but the problem is, so here's where I do think that there is a dose of reality, which is you are going to see, I would say maybe it comes down to a 7-day or something extension, but they have to do something to give themselves cover to be able to go off and go into recess and B, travel, because you can't do that. You look like Will Lewis of the Washington Post going to those Super Bowl parties when you're firing everybody.
Good Paul.
There you go. So I don't see. Anyway, I think this is going to be a short-term extension. Yeah. And I would normally say, and maybe even it's 2 weeks because they realize that they're out, but that's about it. I will tell you again, just so people understand this. I know when they do this that people are like, okay, it's still funded. Many agencies and Coast Guard is part of this, by the way, is part of DHS, do not and cannot function on short-term extensions. When you talk about travel and execution of contracts and things like this, it's not set up to do to operate when you can't. I mean, just the way the law works and funding things, like you'll say, well, we can't travel if there's going to be a break in continuity. And so I know from an outside standpoint, people are like, okay, well, it's funded. It's just, yes, but it's all like Scotch taped together. And this is not a way to run a railroad.
I think there was a nugget in Punchbowl this morning that said that Republicans were looking at a potentially even like 4 or 5 week CR. I mean, I doubt Democrats will give them that much time, but that definitely kicks the can further down.
I don't know. You know what? I think they might. And the reason is, as long as this is in the news, Democrats feel like they're winning.
Yeah, but the pressure is like you're already sensing the dynamic.
But who's
change,
the pressure on? Who's the pressure?
It's still on Republicans, but it's not. It just doesn't feel the same as it felt, at least to me, like even just 2 weeks ago. And the further you get away from it,
sure,
assuming that things continue to calm down, I feel like they lose their leverage. But I'm not.
Well, but here's the thing, Rachel. Healthcare is still Democrats. If you look at polls, overwhelming support for Democrats versus Republicans in healthcare.
Yeah.
Look at polls on immigration. Overwhelming support or opposition to the Democrats. Not support for us yet, but overwhelming opposition to the Republicans. I think that, we may not have as much leverage, but the White House still knows they have to cut a deal and turn this around.
Totally agree with you on that. They'll still have it even in 5 weeks for sure. Okay. Let's talk about Mike Johnson's latest problem in the House. So the Speaker is once again trying to ban House members from forcing votes that challenge the president's tariff regime. They did this at the beginning of last year. They're trying to sort of extend that deadline, which is up either today or tomorrow. Can't remember exactly. But this time around, a number of House Republicans are saying they won't vote for this because, frankly, they don't like tariffs and they might want to be on record on this. You have Don Bacon, who's retiring, saying he might be a no. Kevin Kiley from California, you might know him, Sean, also suggesting he might not vote here. They can only lose 2 with full attendance. But Sean, I find this whole thing incredible because here you have members of the House who, by the way, privately do not like the president's tariff policies, giving up constitutionally mandated powers they have to have a vote against the president on this matter, saying we're not going to do it. Can you explain to people why would Republicans want that? Why would they want to ban those votes?
Why would they want to ban them?
Yeah, from happening.
Well, because I mean, first of all, I think there's a lot of people, myself included, not again, this is not a question of whether you support the president or not, but I believe that the court, when you listen to their arguments and just the nature of when you look at the nature of a conservative court, they're going to go back to, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 and say, where does that power derive? And when you look at trade and tariff policy, it's an Article 1 function. So if you're Johnson, to some degree, you're like, I think the court may save us. And so what you don't want is, and then from just a pure political standpoint, I mean, this gets to your question, why? Because the vote would punt not the delegation of tariff authority, but only until June. And that's why I believe that my theory is right, because Johnson's not abdicating Congress's role in trade or tariff policy, but he's preventing Democrats from forcing a vote until June. So it's buying time to what I believe they think is a court ruling. So they're not saying we're giving up or we're abdicating our authority or our abilities, but rather all we're doing is punting until June so that Democrats can't force our hand.
We're going to let the Supreme Court be the bad guy here instead of going.
I was just going to say, why are they blocking it? Because it's totally unpopular, even in their own conference, and they do not want members to walk the plank and humiliate the president. The problem is if these are allowed to come to the floor, there is going to be a flood of them, and they're going to go country by country and ask Republicans to kind of turn over their cards and say, do you or do you not support it? And if I'm running against a Republican member of Congress, I'm going to come out with a fact sheet of all the businesses in my state that are suffering as a result of these tariffs. And the problem is they're everywhere. So, they're trying to give Trump cover because I think, to Sean's point, they all believe ultimately the court is going to address this and save them from having to do it. But the problem is, as we get closer to November, members of Congress Republicans are starting to look for ways to show some independence, some willingness to speak truth to power. They got to do it carefully because Trump can still crush them like a bug in a primary. But they are thinking of the general. And that's why these moderates are increasingly like, I don't want to much longer keep defending what is obvious to everyone in my district.
I think this is going to really test the theory of the case. I mean, let's see this vote today. Do Republicans fall in line on this? Because you're right. I mean, there are some moderate Republicans who could use this as an opportunity to sort of distinguish themselves, say, look, I'm putting my foot down on this particular area, even as I support everything else the president is doing. But what was the recent vote that the president just called a few people and all of a sudden
that was on
in line?
On the War Powers Act.
It was War Powers in the Senate, but there
military
was
intervention.
Another one too. I mean, so it'll be interesting to see, because there has been a lot of talk about, are Republicans going to start distancing themselves from the president? And you do have people like Don Bacon out here, but Don Bacon's retiring. So we'll see.
But here's the thing though, Rachel, when people thought it might be an D plus 10, D plus 15, meaning 10 to 15% movement towards Democrats in these districts, I think it was 24 seats were considered, maybe 30 in play under that construct. If this goes to 15 to 25, which, we saw in Texas, there was this special down in Louisiana, you now have, I think it's 50 Republicans that come on the board. And that is where you start to get more and more people saying, okay, if my seat is somewhat in jeopardy, how am I going to navigate this? And that's the problem. There's just more and more people getting nervous.
Right.
We should also note here, because Dan, you sent this across the chat, Conservative Tax Foundation releasing a report saying Trump's tariff have cost the American household about $1,000 last year and will probably cost $1,300 next year. That's actually lower than I expected. But any thoughts on that, Sean? Like, do you think if the Supreme Court upholds the tariffs, do you think the president does anything to scale them back in a midterm year?
He's already doing it.
So what I would do, I mean, look, they've made it very clear. Just I've said this a million times, so I'll say it again. But like, there are two routes that you go down in trade policy. One is IEEPA, which is what they used, which allows you to use emergency mechanisms immediately, and then trade dispute mechanisms. Would they take a while longer because the WTO requires an investigation that you submit, et cetera. But they will immediately pivot to those, and not all of them. There's a good chunk that are IEEPA ones. The court will unequivocally uphold the trade dispute ones because the president by law does have authority under current law to investigate, use 232s and a bunch of other of the trade mechanisms. That's unequivocal. So the court's not going to, the court, I don't know that that's even, I can't even remember if that's in the case. The IEEPA ones are what the real issue is. And the government would then just pivot back and say, great, we're reissuing all of this under that.
I think that Trump is going to keep doing what he's doing, which is on Friday nights and when there's big news, he is quietly announcing exemptions to tariffs. He is going to run for the hills on this stuff. Look at what they're doing with farmers, trying to get this $15 billion payment. The farmers are outraged. We haven't even talked about the Argentina thing with beef and all the local press in Texas about how pissed off they are. He is going to quietly, between now and November, run for the hills on this issue. It's a loser. Flat out, it is a loser for him.
Mark it, put it in highlights, guys. Dan is making a real prediction here.
And by the way, you know the water's getting warm for Democrats when you are starting to see Democratic governors write op-eds about how insane these things are. That tells you all you need to know.
Let's move on to Dr. Oz. So we spent a lot of time yesterday sort of praising RFK's MAHA movement. Today we'll talk about a little bit on the other side of things, and more controversial, which is RFK's vaccine skepticism. So this was one of the administration's strongest endorsements of vaccines. CMS Director Mehmet Oz urging Americans to get vaccinated against measles. This comes as there's this outbreak in South Carolina, more than 900 people getting the measles. Sean, let's just start there. Why is Oz the one making this plea? Do you think RFK should also come out and say this?
No, because RFK has already said it. Just so we're clear, someone came prepared today. Headline in NPR, April 7th, 2025. This is NPR, by the way. Health Secretary RFK Jr. endorses MMR vaccine. April 2025. RFK direct quote, most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine. So I think this is a faux issue. The secretary has been 100% clear on his position on this. Why? I mean, look, if you're Dr. Oz and you oversee Medicare and Medicaid, which is two systems that address communities, older Americans and poor Americans, he's reiterating something. But the administration has been very clear. The secretary has been clear on this.
But you wouldn't deny that, there is more skepticism nationwide because of a lot of things that RFK has said regarding vaccine. And his supporters would argue that it's justified, right?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot more skepticism, especially after COVID. And especially after Robert Redfield came out last week and made some serious declarations. So I do think there's a general.
It doesn't hurt to have him doing this too, as well as Oz.
No, but Sean's pointing to a statement from April, right? And that was because it started breaking out in Texas. So RFK went on the record. But if I were to listen to RFK in the last couple months, he's been on the Hill. He's never shy from the press. He is not calling for people to go out. He said it once. He's not saying don't do it. The problem is the measles outbreak is starting to occur more and more. And so Dr. Oz coming out, it's a big deal. I wonder if Caroline Leavitt's asked today about it. And I wonder, Trump has spoken about polio. He has spoken about the powers of some of these diseases in the past and the need to get vaccinated. I will be curious if RFK is not pressured to at least make one more public statement. I don't expect that we're going to hear a lot of statements from him, but I do forget politics. Like, we shouldn't want any child or person with measles.
And he's such a powerful voice, right? Because he
Period.
has been so skeptical,
Correct.
you know, of different vaccines in the past.
Again, I'll just go back to
this one's different is powerful, right?
Right. And again, April 2025, the most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine.
Well, we'll see if that has a new date on it by tomorrow.
Now that's almost a year old. So I would hope he would reiterate it now that there's an outbreak in South Carolina. That's all.
Okay.
We will see. We will see. Let's move on.
I feel like it's like the new standard is you need to reiterate everything that you've said every time that we ask, just so we're clear.
Every time there's an outbreak, I would hope so. Sure. Absolutely.
Because they've been so this, and the reporting suggests this is like the biggest outbreak we've seen in like recent decades. But, okay, let's talk about Cornyn, because Texas is always a hot topic here. So big news for Ken Paxton. Turning Points USA is endorsing him over Cornyn. Sean, you said in our text chain, this is huge. Does it surprise you? And what impact will it have on the race?
And on Trump?
Right. There's two things. One is, look, I don't think this is. I mentioned you guys yesterday, Andrew Colvett on the show, Turning Point USA spokesman, executive producer of the Charlie Kirk show. They are asking for an independent forensics report on their viewers from Super Bowl night. They're estimating well in excess of 30 million people watched the Super Bowl when you look at all streaming services, et cetera, et cetera. I say that as a lead in. And Kid Rock, by the way, his new version of the song he sang jumped ahead, number 1 on the charts ahead of Bad Bunny. Why do I bring that up? Because it shows the power of what Turning Point USA is doing right now. To get that many people to tune in on Super Bowl night, to literally walk away from their television or to flip the channel, shows you the power that they have, right? The number of people that were willing to go along. And so when you, on the heels of that, within 24 hours, say we're flipping the switch for Ken Paxton in Texas in a primary that's very important in terms of turnout, young people, conservative activists, I think is telling. And then to Dan's point, the second, right, just in general, the timing, you're riding the wave, you're doing it at the exact right time. They time this thing perfectly to be impactful. The second reason is because Trump's going to put the dots together at the same time that the Cornyn forces in Washington, D.C. are saying, you got to go with them. These guys are presenting an alternative to Donald Trump and saying, here's where the young people are. Here's where the Charlie Kirk base is. Like, don't believe the establishment. Go with us. Yep. This, at the very least, I think blunts the establishment argument that you have to go with Cornyn, meaning that I don't think this is not if Cornyn's case was built and predicated on the Paxton can't win, no one's with Paxton, just look at us, don't look the other way. Turning Point gave Trump something new to look at, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement that they're bringing to the fight. I don't think this is going to be welcome news for Team Cornyn right now.
Do you think it's possible Trump endorses Paxton?
I do.
And wow. do you think if Trump were to endorse Paxton before the primary, that there is I would think now between Turning Point and Trump that they could potentially push Paxton to 50.
So here's the scenario that has to happen. If I've said this before, I'm very skeptical of Wesley Hunt. Like what I'm a Wesley Hunt fan, despite the fact that he went to West Point.
Nobody's perfect.
But I think if Trump got in and weighed in on Paxton, and then they put pressure on Wesley and said, dude, you got in because you wanted to stop Paxton. Stop Cornyn. That was your real thought. You're not going to do this. We're behind Paxton. We need you to drop out, and we're going to make you the commissioner of something. I think that scenario plays out, and Paxton could win this thing outright. I think that to me is the perfect storm for Ken Paxton right now. And by the way, when you guys elect Jasmine Crockett, it takes the whole electoral piece off the table.
I have a question about Crockett, but first I'm wondering, now I just lost my train of thought because you brought up Crockett. Dan, do you think Paxton or Crockett would win in a head-to-head?
Paxton. I do. Crockett is such a lightning rod. I hate to say this, but this is a political show and we're, paid to be honest here. I think there's always a racial element too that I would kind of wonder about in Texas. I just and the way that the Crockett and Tallarico are going into the gutter on race. I talked about this, wrote a Substack last week on it. As soon as we got off the air yesterday, a poll had come out that showed Crockett ahead of Tallarico by 9. It was the first poll that showed Crockett's up.
That's
I haven't
huge.
seen others. Yeah, it doesn't mean it's not true, but I have not seen any others that show similar results. But of course, you've had this whole brouhaha on the allegation about how Tallarico spoke about Colin Allard last week. I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time seeing Crockett winning.
Yeah, I would say I feel the same.
It may be close, maybe very close, but I think she loses.
You guys know I sent around a clip yesterday from folks talking about how Crockett's running her race and it's so non-traditional. Look, there are certain things that we've all been BS'd by people who are like, I'm going to have the greatest grassroots I mean, at the end of the day, there's no question that there are certain campaigns that have been won in non-traditional ways. Donald Trump being probably the greatest example on a national scale. But there's certain elements that you still have to have. Like you have to run. And Crockett apparently has spent like 200 in the state of Texas to be spending $200,000 and claiming that you're going to 10 events a day. You can't do 10 events in a county in Texas and have an impact, right? And there's people within the Democratic establishment in the Democratic consulting class that are like, what is she doing? Now, there's no question that Jasmine Crockett can get a ton of media. She can play up. I mean, but to run a serious statewide campaign in a state as big as Texas with the media markets they have, the cost of them, to think that you're going to run this grassroots student council-esque type election is insane. So for those reasons, plus what Dan said, she has got no shot at winning statewide.
Mark it, flag it. You both making some big predictions today. Dan on tariffs and Sean on Texas.
Look, the other thing that I would be really concerned about is Crockett's not raising money. Right. So at the end of the day, you got to pay.
It's surprising because she's kind of like a progressive superstar, even if you don't like her.
Part of the question is, look, you may think she's a star, but if you think she has no chance, even the rank and file person thinking of writing $10 may say no. So to me, what would be concerning is you have no money. She has no campaign manager. She does not.
I was going to say, I'm glad you brought that up, Dan. You're running in Texas. You have no campaign manager.
And why doesn't she have a campaign manager?
Well, there's a big rift about whether or not there's sort of a shadow campaign manager that Sheila Jackson Lee's son is technically maybe the musician, the Oz.
Sheila Jackson Lee.
It's possible. To Sean's point, plenty of people have run unconventional campaigns, but in a state as big as Texas, with as many little micro pockets that you have to kind of try to piece together, and in a place where historically our brand is not good and her brand statewide probably needs to change a little bit, to have almost no infrastructure, no money, makes me nervous.
I remembered my question that I forgot.
Can I make one other point going back to Paxton?
Hold on. The question is, if the president endorses Paxton, Sean, does Cornyn drop out? He just retire.
Ooh. By the way, Susan Collins just announced she is running, for all those who are wondering.
As if we were surprised by that. But
ready, hold on. Sure, I want to just pause and show you my shocked face. Okay. I actually think that's a brilliant question, because I was in the back of my head, I was thinking there's another scenario that I want to just throw out there, which is if I'm Paxton now. Right. So I threw out one scenario with Paxton and okay, what if Paxton goes to Wesley Hunt and says, dude, I'll have your back. I'll be your champion to Trump and whatever. But if you drop out, endorse me, I can get to 50 and then I can go to Trump saying, I got Wesley Hunt's backing. I got this. And we can put a nail in this coffin real quick. And I actually think that that's an equally viable scenario where if you've got the TPUSA support, you've got the polling, you've got, if you're Paxton's team, do you take the momentum right now and make a deal with Wesley Hunt, whatever deal that is? I'm not sure, but to the extent that you can say, I will advocate for you to get this, make you be the hero. We go to Trump as a team and say, we're willing to do this. I actually think that that's an equally viable scenario.
And doesn't the president love a comeback story? I mean, like, he has his own comeback story. Paxton was like on life supports politically for a time, right? Under investigation, like all the scandal about his divorce and like.
Well, not just that, but Ken Paxton's always been so supporter. I mean, like, there's no equivocation. Whereas with Cornyn, I think there's always been a, you're here for me now, but where were you then?
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting stuff. Okay, let's take some questions. Okay, from Twitter. Independent Sue in Colorado. Okay. Trump to exclude, this is a good one. Democratic governors from the NGA dinner at the White House. Trump continues to govern as a partisan and in a divisive manner, punish those who didn't vote for him. This alienated Democrats and independents. Discuss the ramifications of Trump's revenge policies on MAGA legacy 2026 and 2028. I mean, first we should talk about the Dem governors thing because we actually haven't really discussed that.
Yeah. I mean, it's traditionally the National Governors Association meets this time of year in Washington every year. Traditionally, the president hosts all the governors and does a dinner. This year, Trump has decided not to invite, I think not all Democrats, but I think most of the Democrats, some of whom are thinking of running for president. Sue's from Colorado. Jared Polis is one of the ones who was not invited. Same with J.B. Pritzker. I mean, look, partisan politics has always been out there. People, Dems and Republicans have always tried to punish their, opponents, even within the party. I can remember a lot of people around the Clintons or Obama, were upset that he let Hillary in. The Obama people blocked a lot of Hillary's staff ideas because they didn't trust her. I mean, this type of retribution has always been out there. But Trump has kind of gone to 11 on a lot of this. And I don't think the future, I think people will just say Trump was, controversial and partisan. And I think that part of his legacy is already written.
Who's actually going, Dan? Do you know?
I don't know. I haven't seen who is. I've only seen who isn't.
Not.
Okay, so interesting. Well, we should flag that. I'm curious. Whitmer? Yeah, the president's favorite Democratic governor?
Is Whitmer? Yeah, Whitmer, Shapiro. I have not heard about. Is Newsom? I haven't seen if Newsom was disinvited. I don't know.
Sean, any thoughts on the question?
Yeah, there's two things that I think were interesting to me. Over the weekend, Wes Moore from Maryland, who is the head of the current NGA, made a big deal and said it was racist that he wasn't invited. Okay,
that's ridiculous.
Right. Again, this is the thing. To Dan's point, it might be partisan and petty, but it's not racist. Like you didn't invite 5 white guys, and then yes, you're the head of the DGA, but you're like everything for some of these folks is a default to like something ridiculous. Like, is it wrong? No. First of all, I think the NGA is a joke. So I mean, that's my personal view anyway. There's a
what do you have against the
NGA? there's a DGA, a Democratic Governors Association, and RGA, Republican Governors Association. I think they should meet. They should do this. The NGA has turned into basically a leftist organization that pretends to be bipartisan. I think it's a waste of tax dollars. So I've never. Okay.
That's how you feel.
I've just. I mean, but that look. Here's the thing. I don't really think anyone gives a crap whether or not there's a black tie dinner at the White House for a variety of governors or not. I mean, look, the president.
Once there's a ballroom, they'll want to go see it.
Oh, that's true. They'll want to go to the ballroom.
I want to see the ballroom.
Well, you've got 2 years, so we'll put that on the list.
Yeah.
But I feel like, look, to Dan's point, pettiness and partisanship go back decades and probably centuries in our history. So, these are not the things that keep me up at night.
Yeah, but the president has a special level of pettiness about him.
Sure, but you know what?
About everything.
I think he embraces it. That's
but you know what? He embraces it, and some of these other guys just hide it better or don't say it, but they do it. Yeah. And there's slights all over the time. I mean, you know what?
It is. I mean, it is true. Like, look, go back to the Clintons in '92 when they got elected, and all the people within the Beltway who tried to sabotage Bill Clinton. I mean, having naughty and nice lists is as old as the Republic.
For sure, 100%. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Okay, let's go to another.
Wait, we're talking Epstein again?
Yeah, that applies to a lot of things in politics, basically everything in politics. Okay, Republican lady, one of our frequent
Oh,
watcher.
I saw this morning. Yeah.
Okay, question. Another suspected drug boat was hit. Crickets here and from the international community as Trump won on that issue politically and legally, even though some relatives are now suing.
I'd actually say the opposite, which is I think he's lost on this issue, so they've stopped talking about it. I mean,
but he's still hitting boats.
He's still hitting drug boats, but I think between Greenland and Venezuela and the just kind of chaos of the beginning of this year, you don't hear this being brought up much. You just don't. The White House kind of stopped talking about it.
Oh, I think that's great.
Intentional.
You know what? That's actually music to my ears. I mean, like the White House being able to execute this policy and go after drug boats without any opposition is fantastic. I don't think they need to talk about it. I think they just need to execute on the policy. So if no one's bringing it up, great.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Sean on that, Dan. Like, I feel like it's not coming up anymore. If they're still doing it, right, and like it's not in the headlines. And look, this is the challenge with coverage, right? You get the nation's attention for so long, and then eventually the story moves on, and like the press doesn't return to it because it's already been discussed. Like, so in some benefits, they benefited from the wait and see.
Oh, for sure. But I think that the bigger issue of hammering of the White House kind of look, you can either take events like this and want everybody talking about them, or you can do events like this and not wanting a lot of people talking about them. And I think what you've seen in the last couple weeks is the White House has made a concerted effort to not talk about a lot of this foreign policy stuff. They just again, in my opinion, the polls show it is not popular. Now,
Dan, don't you? That's
different.
And I don't disagree to some extent, but I would also argue that that's beautiful, great. The less that we're talking about Greenland or boats, and we're actually going out and doing it, it actually.
Well, you're not doing anything in Greenland at all.
But
no, talking about the boats,
yeah,
right? But I'm just saying that, like, on a lot of these issues, and this goes back a little to what we're talking about the DHS stuff. The more it goes to the back burner.
Yep.
That actually, I think, benefits Republicans, because then you're not actually having to defend a controversial issue, and you can actually go execute it.
Yeah, could be.
Let's take another question.
No, I mean, you're right. Could be.
Oh, this is from one of our
super chat. Thank you.
Super chat. Okay. Culture War Ace.
Look at that, just shows that we can be bought.
Cornyn is an incumbent that can't get above 50% in the polls. There will be a runoff, and Paxton will win in the runoff.
Well, as we just talked about, maybe. maybe.
Well, so let's go back to a couple of principles. The early I mean, 10 years ago in politics, maybe even 15, if you couldn't get above 50% and your pollster came back and said your approval rating is in the 40s, you had big problems. Now I think 41 to 43 is the new 50, where you'll be told, hey, look, that's where you're getting enough. So, Cornyn is in a three-way race, as I mentioned, with Wesley Hunt, probably getting between 15 and 20. That gives him, but you're right, culture war Ace, that like if you're not getting at 50%, you still have to, you got a problem if you're an incumbent trying to figure out how to make that math work in a state where you have a runoff. In a normal scenario where you just have to get first to the poll, you're okay. But in Texas, you're right, there's a runoff, and for a multi, I mean, you think about Cornyn, he was AG before he was a senator. I mean, this is a guy who's been ingratiated in Texas politics, especially on the Republican side, for decades. So for him, I think this would be a real tough time. And when you talk about a runoff, that second runoff, and that's what we had in Texas State Senate 9, it was a second runoff, right? The further you go down the rabbit hole of time, it's only those real hardcore enthusiasts that stick with you. And right now they're probably more with Paxton than they are with Cornyn.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about this a couple of days ago, and they were saying that a runoff typically benefits the person who has the heart of the base, right? Because they're going to come out and vote again. And I was like, okay, so Cornyn really is screwed then.
So if you're, I think it's Chris Lasavita who is on this outside support for Cornyn. Sean, you think there's a chance the White House is calling Chris and John McLaughlin and others and saying he needs to, you need to tell
Fabrizio, not McLaughlin, right?
Yeah, sorry. That he's either going to end his career in a runoff getting beat by 30 points, or he needs to just save himself.
I should make some calls and ask this question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but one of the things, and this is not with respect to Chris or Tony or anything, but like the one thing that's always the dirty secret with respect to consultants is the second that you do that, guess what happens?
Yeah, the spigot's off.
The spigot's off, and you stop getting paid. And to be blunt,
honest.
well, that's a reality.
reality.
I've had those conversations with clients in the past where you're like, when you drop out, that means that your nut goes away, and so they're going to want that guy to keep fighting because it's the runoff money, it's the general election money, it's the win bonuses. So it's not in your personal benefit to tell the guy to drop out. And I think they're going to make the case up until the end that Cornyn can win this thing. And there's no question again that he can win a general. So they just have to make the case that, hey, he can get by this. The flip side, by the way, to our argument, if you're running in a state like Texas, is, hey, I've been an incumbent or in office for 30 years. My voter file is awesome. I will be able to turn out enough people in that thing. You know, this other guy, fill in the blank, can't because they don't have the extensive data network that I do. Therefore, he might have the enthusiasm. I've got the data. I've got the money. And Cornyn had what, $8-9 million. Cornyn, last I checked, Paxton's report had like 1.1 million in it. So there's another argument to say he's not going to have the funds to compete.
Hello, Turning Point USA.
Right.
I will say those two are probably making so much money that this Texas race is probably a very small fraction of what they bring in as consultants.
I'll say this, though. If it's Tallarico, Paxton, the amount of money that's going to pour into that state is going to be massive. Because Democrats will say, holy cow, we may have a chance. If you had to say what would be the rate of all the races out there to put on the mantle in December of 26, that would be the one that a lot of Democrats would say, if we could win with a young guy in Texas, I think outside money is going to pour in.
Well, and just real quick to flip it, Crockett's the nominee. I know we talked a little bit in the prior about House seats. That's going to make Republicans excited. I mean, you're running in those 5 new seats, and they're going to have a point to Jasmine Crockett as, hey, if you vote for this, this is what you're. I mean, like this is getting her. If I were an outside Republican group, I'd be pouring money into Jasmine Crockett's race.
Well, and don't forget, Black and brown communities historically don't like each other. And she had some not very nice things to say earlier about. Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Fun times. All right, guys, we got to leave it there. It's 9:30.
By the way, it's election day in Alexandria, Virginia. We've got 2 specials for. I know this probably didn't enter on the radio. It was number 6 on our top 5. We have a special election for the House of Delegates and a state Senate seat. So if you're in Alexandria, Virginia watching today, get out there and vote for the Republican.
There you
Sean,
go.
what's on the show tonight?
Well, you talk about Epstein. We got Alan Dershowitz tonight. We will be talking a lot of Epstein, plus a lot of these other big legal questions and what the president can and can't do with ICE. And there's a big social media case that is taking place right now between Facebook and Google that may be for the first time holding them accountable. Yeah. We're going to get his take on whether or not, where this might go.
Interesting stuff. All right.
Rachel, you got a newsletter coming soon, or what's?
I'm going to be in the car with the toddler today.
Oh,
so
okay. Then.
Any tips?
Lots of CB Distillery gummies. I don't know how y'all.
I think she's driving, Shaw. You can't.
No, I meant for the kids.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a terrible thing to say. No, I really am like she's gonna get screen time. I'm a terrible mother, but otherwise, the girl is going to be crying and just throwing a total hissy fit about being in that car seat for hours. So wish me luck. So,
okay.
All right, we'll be back tomorrow, guys. 8:30. We'll see you then.
You guys.